Hello everyone, it's Patty here, and it's Thursday afternoon. I don't know where the week goes by, but I tell you, it feels like Tuesday. And all of a sudden it's Thursday and we're doing another art tutorial. You may have missed last week's tutorial, and that's because it was done a little bit earlier than I normally do. I usually go live at 3:30, and last week I went live at 12:30 because I had a special guest. And as you're joining, go ahead and just say hi and let me know where you're tuning in from. It's always fun to see where everyone's listening from, and it kind of helps me. I'm starting to recognize, all of these beautiful names that I see every week, and I love that. I absolutely love showing up for you guys and doing what I'm not going to say it too loud, but it's my favorite part of the week. Being able to come up with a lesson that will help you in your classroom and kind of have a conversation about art, which is what I love the most. Hi guys, nice to see you. So now let's get talking about what I'm going to talk about today, and that is form. I kind of was thinking, should I do a project with ceramic or with clay in the Facebook Live? And I'm like, oh, it's just so hard to teach form like standing up unless you have a table to pounce on and to kind of like manipulate the shapes. And so I said, just because you want to teach about form, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do something form-based like clay or paper mache. It doesn't mean that. You can actually teach form really effectively using drawing and painting projects. And many of you are probably doing this and you may not even be aware of it. But I remember when I first started teaching, if you don't know my story, the thing was with me is that I wasn't quite trained to be an art teacher. I was an artist and I was a volunteer, and I kind of got into the teaching industry through that mechanisms. And I really had no idea what a kiln was. I know, it's kind of scary. You're probably thinking, how on earth are you an art teacher? But back then, I didn't really know. I mean, I learned fast, but I didn't know what a kiln was. And so the concept of a ceramics unit or a clay-based project was way like foreign to me. There was just no way that I could have done that. I was familiar with paper mache, and I thought as a teacher, as a young teacher, well, not too young, but it's a new teacher, and that's probably a better word, I was aware that I wanted to teach children about everything. Like that's what I wanted. I wanted to, their time with me was all of the art that they were going to get for the entire year, 15 hours of art for the entire year. And it weighed on my conscience that I wanted to deliver them everything. I wanted to do printmaking. I wanted to do like something like paper mache. So my first year, I didn't do anything like that. I did drawing and painting because that's all I knew. And you know what? The kids, they got an excellent art program. I was super proud. I couldn't believe what the kids could do just with crayons and paint. I was blown away. And you know what? So was the administration and the parents. They were super happy. But by the second year, I'm like, I think I can expand a little bit. I was starting to reach out and finding different books. There was no Instagram back then, no Facebook, and very few websites that had to do with art. So the pickings were slim. But I figured out, I remember going to our local library, and there was a display of paper mache creatures that were so well done. Even today, they're still there. They're still there. And they were so well done. They were all smooth and brightly colored and glossy. And I'm like, how did the teacher do that? So I remember going home and getting out my paper mache, like my flour and water mixture and newspaper, and trying to figure out how to make paper mache. And I read, I borrowed a couple of books from the library, and I just kind of went all in. I remember I bought a big sack of flour from Costco, and I took all of the supplies into the school, and I wanted to do these paper mache dinosaurs with my students, and I chose fourth grade to do it with. Well, so I didn't really know much about paper mache. I did it with flour and water. Did I mention that we had carpeted rugs? Yeah, I don't think I did. You can imagine what it was like. for weeks I had the students bring in boxes and paper towel tubes so we can construct these big dinosaurs. I had no concept at all that how much space it would take to build a dinosaur for each, 30 kids in a class, and I each wanted them to build a dinosaur. It was an absolute nightmare. I almost got fired because all the paper mache fell to the floor, and it was absolutely impossible to get out. They had to hire professional cleaners. The janitor almost got fired. He got so mad at me. The principal got mad at me. Everything was just like a huge mess. And the dinosaurs, they were all falling apart, and I didn't know about putting that trick, about putting tin foil, wrapping it around the soggy newspaper to keep the armature strong. Oh my God. I didn't do form for years after that. I was so scared. I was shell-shocked because it was just a horrible experience. We managed to tweak out a few kids managed to do a couple of successful dinosaurs, but the experience just wasn't all that great. I'm only telling you this story because there's an alternate path. If you have a kiln in your school, no doubt that you probably know how to use it. And if you're a sparkler, there's a whole clay bundle. There's clay lessons in the Deep Space Sparkle website. There's clay lessons everywhere. You probably know what to do. But what if you don't have a kiln? And what if you're clueless like I was about paper mache and you don't even have that alternative of teaching kids form? So this project right behind me is all about teaching kids form through value, like contrast and highlights. And we can all do that. This is a project that I did with my kindergarten class. Now, they didn't do this. I mean, this is my artwork. But they did this. And in this project guide, you're going to find a little handout about how to draw a little pear, and then starting with circles. And so you're going to be able to download this, and Ashley will put the link in. And on the second or the third page, there's a little chart or a little mini poster about form and the different types of, it didn't actually print out that well. I'll have to check in on that. And it's like an activity sheet where the kids can kind of turn a flat shape into a three-dimensional shape. And then also, you know what I thought I would do for you guys? I wanted to include, now if you're a sparkler, you already have this. It's in the form bundle in the Sparklers Club. But if you're not a sparkler, I thought this would be really helpful. And it's the scope and sequence of form. So basically, on the very last page, there's like a list of what kindergartners can do with form, not just with clay or ceramics, but with drawing as well. So I have it K through 6, and there's about 2 or 3 and even 4 suggestions for each grade. So you'll be able to download this and kind of have it as a reference. It's kind of a handy guide. Okay, so now this is the project. This is basically a simple pear, and someone in the Facebook group just before I went on live, she said, you know, you could do this as a partridge in a pear tree, kind of a Christmas element, a tie-in since we're getting close to the holidays. But what I love about this, and I'm going to put it up close, is that it's kind of textural as well. So children are not only creating a form-based object using highlights and shading and shadows and using complementary colors. So they're learning about color. They're learning about value because we're adding white to the background with another color. They're learning about texture because we're going to be using a paper towel to add a little texture to the paint. And they're going to be learning about form. So this simple project is easy peasy. Now, sorry guys, I just have an itchy nose. I don't know. If I hold this up, you can probably see really closely the details in the pear. And that comes from the paper towel, the textured paper towel. So I'm going to put this back over here. And here's the list of ingredients. So if you're a K through 2nd grade teacher, you can do this project. And I've done this project with kindergartners before. It's on my website. There's a painted pear lesson. And the children, the little kinders, used a paper plate like this. Now this is a, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like a 5-inch plate. And this is a salsa container. It's a larger salsa container like I have. There are small salsa containers and then there's larger ones. And I thought this one was perfect. Now what's happening here is that children in grades K through 2, they drawing a shape is easy for them, but if you want to make it really big, it's a lot more helpful for you, especially if you're teaching a bunch of children, like 25 or more kids, to use the paper plate and also the little circular, whatever kind of shape that you have, or sorry, whatever size of salsa cup, or maybe it's a container top, to kind of get the curves and to get the size. Otherwise, they'll draw a really small pear, and then the rest of the project will be harder to do. So in order to get to the form, you have to have the drawing. So that's why I'm using this. Now you can see, if I move aside here, you can see that the paper plate kind of just fits in really well with the bottom of the pear, and then this goes just to the top, and it really gives the kids the opportunity to draw something really big. So all you're going to need is a crayon, and I'm just using I would use the lightest color crayon that you can, like a little yellow or a light green or a little peach. I'm using a blue only because I want you guys to see it on the whiteboard when I draw on the paper. If I use a yellow, which I recommend you use for your students, you won't be able to see it. Then you're just going to need a palette of paint. If you have a 6-well palette, of those, plastic 6-well palettes, just pour some yellow, some aqua, and some white on one side, and then you can use green and red on the other side, and another color if you want. In fact, one color that would be kind of fun is a metallic, and this is a gold liquid tempera paint. It's by Sargent, and these are divine. I thought it'd be just kind of fun to add a little holiday sparkle. So that's what I'm using, but you can mix up your colors too. The first step is to take your paper, and we're using a 12 by 18, just regular sulfite paper. You don't have to do watercolor or anything, just plain old paper, and put this on the bottom, near the bottom. So here is the bottom of the paper, and you want to just hover it a little bit. And you don't want to trace a circle. You really just want to draw like a letter U. If you trace the circle and you're doing this project with little kids, my experience from doing this with kindergartners is that if you trace the circle and then you trace another circle, they're going to turn that pear into a snowman, especially at this time of year. You know they're dying to make a snowman, and they will. So just tell them to draw that letter U, to go around only 3/4 of the way, not the whole way. Then, so I have this, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a big, really big smile. Then you want to just put this, you want to hover it until it gets to about there. Maybe if they put like 3 fingers and just the top, just a little curve. So I have the bottom curve and the top curve. Now, if you have some pears, go to the grocery store and buy some pears, some red pears, some green pears, some yellow pears, put them on the table. I never did that when I was teaching, but I bought at a garage sale once this collection of pears, these plastic pears that you can get at any kind of craft store. Those are more cost effective because you're going to eat the pears and they kind of go bad. And if you have classes, a lot of classes, they're going to start poking holes in those real pears. And if you have to stop this project and start it again like 2 weeks later or a week later, you want your pears to be kind of intact. You don't want them to be all rotting. So I recommend buying plastic pears. Okay, so now I have the top, and you want to have children just go around and meet the top of the pear to the bottom, and they might have to go a little bit wider, and I encourage them to use a little short lines, little sketch lines, so they don't have to just do one continuous line. Tell them to go slow, look at the pear that you have on their table, and see if there's any wobbly parts. and see if it's like a little fatter. If it's fatter than the paper plate, golly, make it fatter. You don't have to just use the paper plate. The paper plate and that little cup at the top, those lines are guidelines, just to know how tall to make that pear. So now I really like this, but I'm going to make it a little fatter. And if you use a light colored crayon, when they paint over the crayon, they're never going to see it. So that's the trick. Then I'm going to put a stem, and the stems are really kind of fun. Make sure you buy the plastic fruit that have the stems, and hopefully they'll have a little leaf as well. But if they don't, you can just have the kids draw a leaf in. Then now I'll just hold this up so you can see it. So this is basically, it's a really simple drawing. Children older than 6, 7 can easily do this without having to use the paper plates. But if you feel you want just a little bit more control over the flow of the classroom, then definitely use the paper plates. Now I'm going to stick with this sample, and I'm going to show you how to just make that beautiful aqua background, and then we'll do a yellow pear. Does that sound good? So if you want to mix your paints, you can, but it's not necessary. So the paints I'm using are blue or aqua, white, and then I'm going to use this green right here. Okay. If you have a paintbrush, I'm going to have to set these down. If you have a paintbrush like this, let me see. Here is, I think a size 10 rounded brush, and this is a large, kind of like a 3/4 inch flat brush, and they're both by Royal Langnickel. They're the big kid brushes. I love these, especially for the little kids. Actually, especially for me. Who am I kidding? Because this really applies the paint in a nice even tone. So you want to start by dipping your paintbrush in the aqua, and you really just want to kind of go around the pear and just get that on any direction you want. You want to make sure you have placemats underneath the art so that the kids can paint right off the paper. I'm just going to move my magnet. There we go, move it back. Now, the fun part is dip your paintbrush. Don't clean your paintbrush. You're not going to need very much water for this. Dip your paintbrush in the green and then dip it again in the blue. So you have 2 colors on your brush, and then keep on going. You want a little bit of an area where the turquoise starts to appear. To make it creamy, add a little bit of white and just play with that whole experience. I'm going to dip my paintbrush in the water. If the paintbrush gets a little dry, I just do this. Dip in, dip out. Don't try to clean it up, and this makes the paint go around a little bit easier. So now I have some turquoise and I have some green. I'm really liking how this is looking. Whenever the brush gets a little bit too dry, you can just dip it into the water. But you don't have to. Some kids really don't use a lot of water, and some kids, oh boy, they use a lot of water. So you just want to keep on going. And when you get to the edges of the pear, that's when you can start painting on the edge of the brush. So what I mean by that is you can kind of go around, hold your paintbrush up really high, and just kind of cut into that. Just like this. Yeah, I'm going to add a little bit more white. I'm going to add some white over here. And one thing that happens, you can have one side of the art a little bit lighter than the other side. And the older the kids get, the more easily they can do this. If a kindergartner's doing it, let's face it, they're just going to kind of put that paint on that paper any way they know how, and guess what? You're going to let them, because you don't want to get too picky with the little ones. But you know, when they get to be 7, when they get to be 8, they're going to really like how it looks with the different values. The kids, when they add white to a color, it creates this beautiful pastel color, and that's really rewarding to see. In fact, I'm kind of getting into it now too. I just love how it all looks. just going to wet my paintbrush just ever so slightly. Now, one thing you can tell older kids is the benefits of kind of moving their paintbrush up and down. So not just going in one direction. You know, half the time we tell our kids just paint in one direction. And so we're kind of sticklers about that. But with this project, just say go to town. Now, one little trick that I have is the technique of smoothing the paint. So when little kids, even as old as 10, paint, there's a lot of light areas and blobby areas. So you want to kind of come back with your paintbrush that is pretty much a dry paintbrush, and you want to paint in the opposite direction. And you're kind of smoothing out the blobs, but at the same time, you're giving this really cool kind of a texture. And I'm just going to go around, maybe make that a little bit darker, around the bottom. And for older kids, 10, 11, 12, you can really tell them to take a look. This is painting the negative shape, but make sure they cut in pretty closely to the pear so they get a really good shape on the pear. Okay, so I'm going to put my magnet up here and right there. Now, if you want to, you can take a little bit of the paper towel. And if you weren't here at the very beginning, we're adding texture with a paper towel. And if you have paper towels in your art room, not the kind that the janitor is going to put in, but the textures like the Bounty that have those little textures to them, those are really fun to use. And each table can, or each child, just use a small square, and you can just kind of dab the area, and it looks like canvas. It makes the paper look like canvas. And I really like how it looks. If the paint dries, it's not going to have as much of an effect. So you want, for the pear, we're going to do it a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm still using the thick brush. And to clean the brushes, just pounce, pounce, pounce. Again, everyone has their own technique, but for the kids, I say, you know, get that brush into the bottom and then drag the bristles across the rim of the container, and you don't have to flick the water. Okay, so now I'm just running my brush along my paper towel that's on this table, just to make sure it's clean. And now I'm going to go with yellow. Contrary to what fine artists do, where they kind of lay in the dark colors first, with tempera paint and with kids, I find it's better to lay in the light colors first, especially because the tempera paint is just a different kind of grade of paint. So I would, if I'm doing a yellow pear, I'm just going to put a big bunch of that yellow, and I'm going to go all the way up to my background. And if I go over the background a little bit, not a problem. I do have a little bit of blue on my brush, and I'm running into the blue background, but that's okay because it's making the colors really interesting. So now I'm kind of using short strokes, and there's my pear. Well, that's the start of it anyways. And I see how there's just some shape issues here. I'm just going to smooth that around, and I'm even putting some of the yellow up here. I'm starting with light, and I'm going to work to dark. So the whole thing is going to be yellow. Now you don't have to do yellow pear, it could be red. So you could do a whole red pear like I did over here, or kind of an orangey red. Okay, now what I want to do is take a little bit of the green, and not too much. A little bit of the green goes a long way. And if the light is coming from this side, because this is a lighter side of the painting, then the shadows are going to be more over here. So I want to just paint in, and make sure you take a look at this. This handout is kind of helpful for the little kids. If they're just not quite sure what you're talking about, put this on their table and they'll get it. And you get that in the download, and actually put the link in the comment section, but I'll after this video, I'll add it to the title as well. So then you just want to go along here and just kind of add some shapes. Like we know that the bottom part of a pear is kind of bulbous, like it's round. So you want to just make a little bit of that look here. And so there's so much paint on my brush already. And this goes in a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit more. Now, I like that. Here's the trick. To add it even darker, I'm going to add a little bit of this red. So the opposite of red, or opposite of green rather, is red, the complementary color. When you mix two complementary colors, you're going to get a neutral color. And this is a far better way to add that nice dark area at the bottom of the pear. Then I'm going to add a little bit of water, then to add black. Now you can add black if you want to, but I think this is a little bit more interesting. And it's another technique, another element of art that you can introduce your students to. Just like that. And the more red and green you make, here's a little, you can actually use your paper, your placemat to get, I'm adding a little yellow here to make it a little bit warmer. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to take my paper napkin and just kind of give it a little dab. And that's pretty cool. Now I'm going to add a little bit more warmth. Now I'm cleaning my brush and I'm adding a little bit of warmth with the red and a little bit of yellow. So that makes orange. And I'm just gonna, that's a little bit too much. Ooh, boy, red is a strong color. Okay, there we go. I just want to add a little bit of warmth up here. Okay. I also want to add a little highlight. So I'm going to take a little bit of white and just add it there and here. And if you want to, take your placemat, paper towel again, and then just dab it. And it's hard for you to see, I know, but it looks really cool up close and the kids will love it. Now I'm going to take that white off my brush and I'm going to go back in with the green and I'm going to just paint the underside here of this. I think I'll make it all green actually, this leaf, and I'm going to add a little bit more red. I'm going to just pick up some of that brown down there. Didn't work. Okay. I just wanted a darker green, more of an avocado green. So there we go. And I'm just using the edge of the brush and just paint that in. Needs a little bit more water. I hope you try this. It's actually, I feel myself after a busy day, it's kind of calming. You know, don't you feel like that when you're doing your sample lessons? It's such a fun part of your day that you just kind of get to do kids art, but with your own like little personality in the mix. Okay, so I don't really like that big old fat leaf, but I'm gonna see what I can do. Just add a little texture to it. Well, whatever. Okay, I'll let that go. Okay, so now I want a little bit more brown. So a little bit of green and red will get me some brown. I'm just gonna brush it back and forth here. And then I'm gonna use the tip or the edge of my brush. Probably needs to be a little bit wet. And just make that. Not very good. Okay, actually is okay. So that's it, guys. That's my pear. Like, how easy is that? You might be asking, how is a kindergartner going to do that? Well, check out my blog because, oops, there we go. I found that using the plates with the little kindergartners was super helpful, but make sure you only do the small, do the underside of the plates and the top part of the circle. And that way they have a reference. They can draw nice and big. And you'll be really amazed at how well they fill in that color into that shape. One thing that kindergartners and first graders may not do, it'll be hard for them to mix the orange or the red and the green together. So you might have to give them a little bit of brown with the yellow. And so you might have to kind of help them out a little bit more with the colors and kind of go step by step. We're going to paint our Pear yellow, and let's add maybe even some splatter paints for like that brown spots that go on the Pear when they get a little old. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can kind of help a little kinder out. But I tell you, when you get to 4th and 5th grade, they're going to love doing this, and each one is going to have their own personality. Now, don't be afraid to steer away from these typical colors of the yellow Pear or the red Pear. They can make a pink Pear if they want, and they could have like purple shadows and like yellow contrast or highlights. So they can do like a pop art or an impressionistic Pear if they want to, and then you can just tie in a whole other like movement even. So there's so much you can do. So now I want to talk to you about clay. So have you guys used this? This is Crayola, the air dry clay. And what this looks like is this. It's just kind of squishy junk. It's like, it reminds me of silly putty. This is great. If you don't have a kiln, you can do an awful lot with this type of clay. I find it's a little bit more expensive, but I guess, you know, kiln clay can be expensive too, and there's a lot more process to it. But this dries just after about 24 hours. It's ready to paint, so it's super, you know, efficient, easy to prep. And you might have to give children a lot more of this clay than kiln fired clay, because you have to keep this relatively thick. You can't do really thin like plates or anything, but you can make a little pinch pot out of this. You just can't go too thin, because what will happen is it'll kind of fall over. It doesn't have really good support, but you can make lots of stuff out of this Crayola air dry clay. And so if you don't have a kiln, this is a great product to buy. At least it's kind of one of my favorites. For the best, put that cover on later, I think the best air dry clay is Laguna. And I've used Laguna air dry clay many times. Not necessarily in the classroom, but when I'm doing videos, and I tell you, those projects, they come out really well. You put a coat of Mod Podge on those puppies, and I tell you, they are like solid. As long as you don't do anything too tiny and little pointy things, you know, like no wizards with like pointy like hair and stuff, that'll break off. But things, you know, your general things, the Laguna air dry clay really has a lot of body to it. And the clay that I found was, you know, equally as good as this Craft Smart. It's called Natural Clay, and this is an air dry clay. And I thought that was, I've tried a few projects with that, and it worked out really well. So if you don't have a kiln, those are my suggestions. Yes, you can always watch these videos again. Joanna, just head on over to Deep Space Sparkle. We put the video in the lesson library and also on Facebook. It's always there. And you, in fact, if you go to the Facebook page, you can view all of my past Facebook Live art tutorials, plus more. There's tons of stuff there. I hope that this project will kind of get you through the hump. I want you to try it yourself. You'll actually like it. I think trying the project yourself will really help you when you teach the lesson to the children. So I definitely want to see pictures. We do a Friday share every day or every week on the Deep Space Sparkle page. If you do this lesson, I would love to see a picture of it. So make sure you let me know. You can tag me if you want. And I hope you have a great day. Make sure you download this. Now next week, good grief, I'm trying to think of which one comes next, and I can't remember. But we're doing it, this is the 9th element of art, principle of design. We have 12, so we have 3 more coming up. And I'm going to try to, whatever it is, I think it's unity, I'm not sure though. It's probably either movement or unity. I will tie it into some type of holiday theme. So next week when you join me, we'll do a holiday theme art tutorial. So listen, you guys, have a very creative week. Stay safe. Keep creating. And if you have any questions, let me know. So see you later.